not all carbohydrates are equal. And even you said, white sugar isn't even the white devil that you've been convinced that it is. So how do you help people just reevaluate their relationship to sugar and carbohydrates in general?
Um, that is such a good question. And I think when you look at how carbs are metabolized, and then we do compare them to how fats are metabolized, we do know that over time, when we put the time factor in there, and that is important because obviously we know that fats contain more energy than a carbohydrate does if we just look at weight. But when we actually look at time, we know that through time that carbohydrates will move through the system or through the mitochondria and through the Krebs cycle, through the electron transport chain, quicker than fats will. And so over time, carbs will produce more ATP over time in an effective system that has all the resources, meaning it
Mm.
has all the nutrients. I like to refer those as like your little workers. I always give people the analogy is like if you had a conveyor belt and you had little fat molecules at the start or carbohydrate molecules at the start. Then you have along your conveyor belt, you have these workers there. Then they're changing basically the molecules of that initial starting um, fat or carbs. And those workers are usually the coenzymes that are helping it, and those are facilitated by vitamins and nutrients or even proteins. Then, as they move through, we change it, and if we have all the workers, then we can move through the system really quickly. And at the end result is we produce more energy. Now, fat will just naturally go slower because that's how it's moving through the system. And carbs will just move a little bit faster. Carbs will also need additional nutrients. Maybe they need more B1, maybe they need, but so if there's not enough B1 there and you have a lot of carbohydrates, maybe that system's going to get more backed up. So
Mm.
there are going to be inhibiting factors that could happen when you have certain, carbs versus fat. But in a system that has all the right nutrients, it has enough oxygen, it has enough thyroid, then carbs will be the nutrient that will go through faster producing more ATP over time. The other thing that it will do is it does facilitate 50% more carbon dioxide as it goes through the process. So we now know that carbon dioxide is super important for oxygenating of the tissue. If you don't produce enough, then the entire final step of the electron transport chain, which is the oxygen coming in to get the final electron, is either hindered or it's backed up. And again, that is another thing that's going to back up our system and make us produce energy slower over time. So oxygenating, getting oxygen into the tissue is really important. The molecule that does that is carbon dioxide.
Mm.
So again, you have more of that being produced with carbohydrate metabolism over fat metabolism. So that is an important component here
Mm.
too. And so, we also look at your body in general. Look, your nervous system runs on carbs. It runs on carbs because your nervous system needs quick energy. It needs the energy source that's coming in much faster. And so that's why your brain runs on carbs. That's why the nervous system runs on carbs. And again, your red blood cells can only use carbohydrates as well or glucose as fuel. So because they are basically running off of anaerobic respiration. So they don't have mitochondria. I think, what did I just read? You have like 20 trillion red blood cells,
Mm.
and that's the only fuel source. So that's really important because you cannot transport your oxygen without these red blood cells and hemoglobin and so forth. And so carbohydrates are essential for that, right? You can't use fat as that fuel. You can't use ketones as that fuel. So we are going to always need these carbohydrate sources. It's just that over time and under stress, our body has more blocks that inhibit that entire process. And that's when, again, going back to our conveyor belt analogy, the conveyor belt gets backed up
Mm.
and it moves slower. And so you keep trying to put carbohydrates in there, but it's backed up. It's not, whatever the reasoning is. So that's when you start to see the carbs can't get into the cell because it's backed up. They stay in the blood. And then we start seeing things like high blood sugar. And certainly having high blood sugar is not a good thing. But is it the sugar that's inherently causing it, or is there something going on with the cell or an energy block that's inhibiting it from getting into the system, getting into the cell, and that's creating the problem. So just removing the sugar, yes, it looks better. It makes your insulin improve. You will lose weight. All those things are going to happen. But the moment somebody that has that problem and hasn't fixed it introduces carbohydrates again and immediately gets high blood sugar, we know well, now your system's not fixed.
Mm.
You've made an altercation that's making it function. That's fine. But over time, your body still prefers carbs. So you're going to start seeing some adverse responses. And usually you'll start seeing low testosterone, low hormone function, low thyroid. They start to not sleep as well. There can be a variety of different things that can start to happen for that individual And at that point in time, you know, that's when they could be 3, 4, 5, 8, 9 years. I think Sean
Mm,
Baker, I don't know how long he's been doing this. I think he's starting to see that he might need to change. I know he's tried adding some carbohydrates at times, but you know, I kind of will see, but you know, we don't have any long living cultures or really a lot of people to kind of assess that they're doing these diets to well into their 80s and 90s and doing great. We
mm.
don't have a lot of people to kind of go, yep, that's a good path. Look at all these people that are doing really well on this kind of diet.
Yeah, it's fascinating. In a way, I'm kind of grateful for all of these citizen scientists just doing their own thing, because we're getting to watch the grand science experiment play it out, and I guess we're getting closer to the truth in some kind of way, and we'll see how it all unfolds. But yeah, there's a lot of stories of people, like you just said, they start they go keto or carnivore. They feel amazing, and then at some point something starts to happen. You know, they add foods back in, they usually get back to that baseline level of health. But all right, friends, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Radical Health Radio. We got a fresh new podcast for you every Wednesday. If you enjoyed the show, consider liking, subscribing, reviewing, and rating us on your podcast platform. It helps to spread this message of radical health. We'll see you next week.